All right. I think it worked. So I am live here now with Stephen M. Conway, and he is going to join me before the new release of his book, We Built a Dragon. And I'm very excited. I'm going to give an introduction here. Stephen M. Conway is a writer who blurs the line between myth and memory. His middle grade debut, We Built a Dragon, is a heartfelt tale about grief, fatherhood, and the power of imagination. He's now working on a darker fantasy trilogy, The Forging of Lost Embers, exploring sacrifice and redemption. Inspired by authors like Joe Abercrombie and Robin Hobb, Stephen mixes gritty realism with lyrical storytelling. And when he is not writing, he's often outdoors with his son or diving into new creative projects. So, with that, we have Stephen here. We have his son Huxley as well. I'm going to give Stephen a chance to do a quick pitch for We Built a Dragon, and then we'll get into an interview.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. I really appreciate you having me on here. Um, yeah, We Built a Dragon. It's a funny book because I didn't really intend to write it. I'd had the seed of the idea for a few years, but in a very different form. And then I was just going through a really bad spell one Friday. I got stuck with my fantasy trilogy, and I just started writing it. And for 3 days, I did nothing but write a story. It just literally fell out of me, 13,500 words, and I cried through the whole of it. And it was a proper catharsis writing it. And at the end of it, I realised that what I had written was possibly for me the most important thing that I've ever written. And it's a book that deals with grief, and it deals with a child going through grief and his father going through grief. And what I'm hoping is that it will be a book that children or parents who going through a period of grief can hold on to and read, and feel that it's not something new that they're going through. It's something that we all go through. Everybody goes through grief at some point in their life, and you know, really feel that they're connected with the rest of humanity in that regard, and help them through it, because grief is a lonely place to inhabit, and nobody should have to go through it alone. So that's why I wrote the book, and that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that it reaches the right audience, people that need that story. So yeah, that's it.
That's great. And I know that this is definitely potentially a very special one. I know that it was when I wanted to do this new series. I know I wanted to have an opportunity to have you on because I have been following the story that you've been putting out on X that kind of outlined that uh, process by which you were writing and your inspiration for writing this story. And it sounds like something, my children fortunately haven't had to deal with the grief situation just yet. But, as my parents are getting older, and the reality is that at some point, that's going to be something that they're going to need to face, whether they like to or not. So I think that this is definitely a story that could definitely connect with a lot of people, be meaningful during different periods of time. So I mean that's great. So with that, I mean, we have the basis that this poured out of you, you're saying. So it was one of those things that you were inspired, and you know you mentioned that you got stuck with where you were writing with the other thing. I mean, tell me more about the genesis of this idea, like where it came from.
Okay, so um, we actually we built a dragon out of sticks in the wood when Huxley was younger, probably about 5 years old. One day there was an area of woodlands next to where we used to live, called the Fairy Woods. All the trees had little fairy doors on them that people would put there, and fairies hanging from the trees. And one day I was just walking through the woods and I saw this, probably part of a trunk, and I just said it looks like a dragon skull, that, doesn't it? And we all came over and we looked at this piece and we were like, it's a dragon skull, that, yeah. And he was still in that wonderful phase where he believed, yeah, he's kind of getting cynical now. He's in that cynical child stage where it's like, no, it's not that. But back then he still believed, and so we got this dragon skull, and then we found a piece of trunk that worked as a spine, and we just scoured these woods for old bits of dead wood and driftwood, and slowly but surely we built this dragon up over the course of a few weeks. And then one day we came to the woods, and somebody had just trashed it all. And I was like, no, why would you do that? And we were just really, yeah, heartbroken. And while we were building it, obviously, um, we would tell stories about the dragon and about what we were getting up to, or how we would fly off and have adventures. So when I had the original seed for the idea, it was going to be much more of a children's sort of fantastical story with a dragon that we built and then we flew off and had all these wonderful adventures. And that's what I envisaged. And it's very much not that story that poured out of me. I'm generally a plotter from a writing perspective. You know, I'll sit there and I'll do my world building, I'll have maps and everything. And I do that. But this story, I literally wrote down a dozen bullet points of where I thought the story should go, and then I just wrote it, as I said, over 3 days, non-stop. So yeah, it was inspired by real life experiences. Yeah.
Yes. So you actually had the experience of building the dragon. Sound like I love that.
And it did get destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the nature of things like that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you had this experience with your family where you've created this thing in the woods. This became a muse for you. I know that the inspiration, I believe, was hardship, so upheaval in your life that essentially made it more emotional. Like you said, I think you wanted this to be maybe more fantastical adventure kind of story, and it turned much more deep. So I'm curious, what you feel comfortable about talking, for sure, but I'd love to dig into that more.
Yeah, no, I'd say the original idea was it was going to be a fantastical story. But yeah, the moment I sat down to write the story, I literally just got my divorce through. My marriage fell apart, and I just got my divorce through. And I was in a place of grief myself because that's fundamentally what a marriage breaking down causes is grief. You've lost a life in effect, you've lost a relationship, and it brought up all the feelings from my childhood because I lost my mother when I was young, and it all just came back, and so I think the book was me trying to process that, but also it was a healing for me. It really was. By the time I'd finished writing the book, I'd filled an entire bin full of tissues from crying my heart out, and I just felt so much better. It was like fast forwarding through the grief process, which that was at that point that I realised that it was potentially a special book. That if it had allowed me to do that, then it could potentially do it for others. And yeah, there's been a few people that have read it pre-release, beta readers and pre-release that have got back to me and said, yeah, I was in tears. It's a very special book. Thank you for letting me read it. So yeah, I'm very hopeful, as I say, that it will reach the people that really need it and help them connect with themselves and with that part of them that needs healing and get them through that process. Yeah.
Yeah. So set us up with the premise of the story. So what is the setup for We Built a Dragon?
It starts in a very, very cheery thing. It starts at a funeral.
Yeah.
And basically, there's a father who doesn't really know what to do with his son. They've both lost somebody very special to them, and they're trying to connect. And the father suggests, building this dragon as a process to just, I think, occupy themselves more than anything. He's just a bit lost, and he's looking for something to occupy them. And I don't know. And yeah, so they build this dragon, and I don't want to do too many spoilers. But
sure.
yeah, they have a few mishaps along the way with the dragon being destroyed, and they have to overcome those. And there's also, without it being preachy, the dad tries to teach his son some lessons about life that might help him to come to terms with his grief and learn to process it. So that's really the premise. It's not.
So we have an anxious, gentleman over here that I think maybe wants to have an opportunity to talk. I believe you said that Huxley was the first one to read this after you wrote it.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us anything about that?
Yeah, I thought it was really good because it includes a main character who's also kind of been in my life.
So it related to it. You're related to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bully in it that has to be dealt with.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Huxley, if you were surprised when your dad gave that to you that he had written that.
A bit, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, no, he said to me, I think, when I had him first read the book, that he said I was his second favourite author, which I was obviously very happy about. I'm actually above J.K. Rowling, so.
I mean, if you're going to lose to somebody, that's not bad.
Have you finished, or are you just getting restless? Right, I think he's said his piece.
We're losing. That's good. That's
might come back, maybe.
All right. Thank you for coming.
There we go. Right. Yeah. So yeah, he really enjoyed it, and I think that was one of the things that persuaded me that it was worth publishing as well. Because obviously, I didn't start writing it for any reason. It was a story that had to come out. And when I finished it, I thought, well, this is a children's story, and it makes sense if the child reads it. And while it sounds as though it's very heavy going, it's not. There's a lot of light touches in there. There's a lot of humour in there. I feel it's quite well balanced in that regard. Yeah. But yeah, I really enjoyed writing it. I really enjoyed getting into the character of a young child and because it's from first person point of view. So it's written completely from the boy's point of view. So it's very childlike in the language and how he's thinking. I tried to communicate all his thoughts and all the mess that's going on in his head. And I've had people say, you've absolutely nailed it, which I put down to the fact that I'm, in many regards, still a 6-year-old child, I think. So it wasn't that hard to connect with him.
Yeah, I'm interested to maybe dig in a little bit more on that as far as being able to put yourself into the mind of a small child. We've all been children, but at some point you grow up, and I don't know, like, I'm thinking about how it might be to try and write from the perspective of, let's say, somebody like my son, like of that age. and just think of the way that you process things and the language. Did you find that it was pretty accessible to you to try and to put yourself in that headspace? Was there any challenge there? I mean, obviously you wrote it quickly, so
Um, I have thought about this because there's a few people that have asked me how I managed to do it, and I'm somebody that pays a lot of attention. So I pay a lot of attention to my son, and I'm very analytical. So I I can't stop myself. So I'll be analysing what he's saying and the way that he is, and the way that children will latch onto certain words or certain key phrases that they'll use repetitively as they're growing and as they're getting to grips with language. So I've got the best tutor really in how a child thinks and how they speak, and he's been raised to be open and honest. So I don't have a child that's grunting and doesn't communicate. So I'm very blessed in the fact that I've got a great character study.
I am the best tutor, yes.
And he's very cheeky. So yeah, it's a combination, I think, of being observant, obviously having a child, but as I say, also I think, and it's kind of sad, but I do think that because of the experiences I had as a child, I think there's still parts of me that haven't really emotionally evolved and haven't grown up. So it wasn't that hard to tap into it and express it. Yeah, so I think that's how why I managed to do it. Yeah.
I think that that's it's impressive because I think a lot of people they struggle with even like adult characters that are just a little different than them. I see a lot of writing that's very much like the self insert, if you will, and to really be able to put yourself into somebody else, not just like a different personality, but like a completely different age. And to be able to convey that well in a meaningful way that a child is able to read, recognize themselves, and connect with is great. And the thing that makes those that approach that type of literature, impressive to me in a way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've got a few other ideas for books as well. Because I'm always good with ideas for books. I love to tackle teenagers next.
Yeah,
I think that'd be great fun, and he's not far off. So in a few years, I might try and do a teenage character and see if I can nail that.
Yeah. I've written a few teenagers, and I feel like I've done okay as far as capturing that like, kind of restless energy. But I don't know. Maybe we'll see. when a teenager gives me some actual feedback on how I did. I have the benefit of the fantasy world to wrap that in.
Yeah.
That's why it's not quite right. So I assume that this is kind of set in a now present setting, modern day type of environment.
Yes, it's basically set in a village in northern England, because that's where I'm from and that's what I know. And as I say, it just fell out of me. So all the language and the characterizations are from northern England, and it's contemporary based. But there's definitely a magic realism twist to the story. But there's also stories within the stories. The father tells his son various stories, across the book as he's teaching him lessons about life. So yeah, it's not quite fantasy, which is what the original Seed was, but it's got that little bit of magic to it. That's all I will say.
Yeah, you got to read it. You got to read it, folks.
Yeah.
So it's a quick read. So it sounds like most of the people that I've seen, they're kind of able to sit down and get through it maybe in a sitting or so. It's not a long novel we're talking about here.
Yeah, depending on your speed of reading, it's an hour to 2 hours of reading. Yeah, and I intentionally kind of wrote it that way because of the target audience. I thought, somebody that's going through grief, they might not want to sit down and tackle a long book because when you're going through grief, you quite often can't motivate yourself to do much. So I thought, as a short book for somebody to pick up for an hour, I thought it was an ideal length. That was my thinking behind it.
So tell me a little bit about the process. So you wrote the first draft in 3 days. You obviously had beta readers. You've gone back and edited it. You mentioned that, editing it was tricky for you because it was such an emotional story. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the first draft was really, really rough. Blessings to I think there was 2 people that read as alpha readers that read the first draft, and they were the ones that convinced me to polish it up, because they were like, yeah, there's a seeds of a really good story in here. But the first draft was the cases were all over the place, the punctuation. It was literally me just sat down, because I handwrite as well. I don't type. I physically write. So it was literally me sat down scrolling through these tears as all these emotions came out, and yeah, the alpha readers went through it and they were like, yeah, there's obviously a lot that needs doing with it, but this is a really good story. There's a really good seed of a story in here, and you need to polish it. So then I polished it a bit more. Got a group of beta readers. They went through it with a fine-tooth comb, gave me lots of great suggestions on where it could be better, and what needed tweaking, where I'd used language that was not even language that was only really known to people in England, but language that's only really Northern English. Words that only people even in Lancashire might know. And I was like, right, yeah, but change some of those. So some of the words got changed, and then once I'd been through beta reading, I got a professional editor to go through it, and she corrected all my punctuation and sorted it all out. And then, because I wasn't happy after that, I wrote an additional chapter for it, and then I had to rewrite whole sections of it because I'd inserted a new chapter, and I had to make sure that the things that happened if it was a chapter 2, let's make sure that the things that happened in chapter 2 were then reflected in all the other chapters. One of the beta readers said that the payoff wasn't really foreshadowed properly, so I had to sort of backfill the story in some sections. So yeah, I actually say in the book, because one of the things that I realised while writing it is that writing a book starts off as a solo pursuit, but it ends up as a collaborative journey, really. If you're prepared to listen to other people and take their ideas and their feedback on board, it becomes a joint project. So I've read it. I mean, it's one of the benefits that it's such a short book. I've read it 25 times now. I've read it aloud 5 times, to get the cadence of the sentences and make sure that it all feels and reads correctly. And yeah, it's been edited so well that I think there's only about a dozen mistakes in it now.
There's got to be a few.
I'm sure you're familiar with that. The way I see it is it proves that it wasn't written by AI if there's still mistakes that it when it's published. Yeah.
I'll still find some every now and then. I'll flip to a page and do something. I'm like, what did I do?
Yeah, I was reading it. I was like, why have I not put a comma in there? I know there's a comma that should be there. And I got one sentence as a double set of American apostrophes at one side and a single set of English apostrophes at the other. I'm just like, oh, why have you missed that? Yeah. But, that's what books. I read traditionally published books every now and then. I'll be like, who's editing this? So.
All right. So it's out there in the world now. What do you hope for it? How do you?
All I hope for, and this sounds fairly humble, if it reaches one person that needs it, then I'll be happy. If it reaches more than one person that needs it, then I'll be ecstatic. You know, there's people out there, I'm sure, that are going through grief that have nobody to help them with that process, that are confused by it, and that are really struggling. And if they find my book and they read it, and it helps them realise that somebody else went through it and they came out the other side, and that grief, I wouldn't even say grief ends. Grief transforms into something else eventually. You know, the memories become special, and the time that you spent becomes special, and grief transforms into something beautiful. And that's what the book tries to teach people. You know, that it starts out as a monster, but it ends up as something beautiful. And I just hope that people find the book, read the book, and heal from it if they need it. That's all I'm looking for, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a noble goal, especially for this type of story, for sure.
Yeah.
So this is your first published work, right?
It is my first published work. Yeah. I've been writing. I started at school. At school, I was one of those people that would get set an assignment to write a 2-page story, and I'd hand in 25 pages of paper. and the teacher would no doubt just go, "Yeah, tick, well done," and not even bother reading them, I'm sure. And then I progressed to poetry, really, really bad poetry in my teens. And then songwriting through my 20s. I used to be a musician, a singer-songwriter. And then sort of in my 30s, once I'd given up the dream of being a musician, I thought, right, okay, I'll start trying to write some of these fantasy stories that I've got in my head and other stories without any real idea of how to write them. That would have been about the year 2000. So, you know, there wasn't really a lot of information online. There wasn't, you know, the internet wasn't what it was. So you literally, you could do courses by mail for writing, or you could go and study at college, but there was no real help in how to write. So I just sat down and it was like, okay, you've read enough books, just kind of write stories. So I didn't know anything about plotting stories. Right? I'd just sit down and I'd write. And I'd write and write these stories, and I'd write hundreds of pages until eventually I'd just get in such a mess. I'd be like, oh, "This is rubbish," and then it'd just go on the shelf. And yeah, so this is the first book that I've actually published, but I think I've probably written about 10 that are in some form or other that would never see the light of day.
Yeah. It's the practice. The practice runs before the
it is, yeah. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it helps teach you the lessons of how to get better at it, for sure. Even if they never get out there, you learn your lessons.
You do. Yeah.
So you're working on a fantasy trilogy next, or now currently?
Well, I'm about 50,000 pages through the first one. It's all plotted out. None of my characters have drifted off plot once at all, ever. But I just grown to a halt. I had this epic middle scene, and then the story naturally, because you know fantasy novels take peaks and troughs, it just ended up in a proper trough. My characters are just in horrible situations, and I have to reach this really horrible mind space to write the chapters. So I don't know if a method writer exists, but I like to try and get into the mindset and try and get into the state of my characters. Like I'll deprive myself of sleep to write some chapters, so I'm absolutely on the uppers, like, so that I can kind of feel that. Yeah, my character's in a horrible place, and I just like whenever I pick it up and I'll read like the last sort of like few pages, I'm like, oh, why did I do this to them? It's horrible. So I'm struggling with it, but I will get back to it definitely. Now that this is out, I don't have to worry about it, and I can get back to that. As long as nothing else draws my attention, I'm forever writing down plots for stories, and then I'll start a few pages because I love opening paragraphs. I love writing a good opening paragraph, so I'll write an opening paragraph on that. And I like that opening paragraph. And I like these characters, and I'll make some little notes about the story. And then I'll be like, God, I didn't tell you trilogy. I've got a folder down there with all the plot and all the character notes, all the world, all the magic system and everything. I've got a map up there on the board. So yeah, I will get back to it and hopefully try and finish the first book. But the plan is I'm not gonna torture people by releasing one book and then saying, "Oh, I'm starting the next one." I'm going to write all three before I even start talking about publishing it, because the other reason is I think I might kind of get towards the end of the third one and then go, "Oh, that doesn't work.
Gotta go back.
I've changed chapter one in book one," and you can't do it if you publish it, can you? So I'll probably write all three.
Now, I think that's a good strategy especially for series. I think a lot of people, at least in my experiences, even selling them, it's once they know that it's done, they're like, "Oh, okay, I'll buy the whole thing." But if it's just one book or two, they're like, "Oh, I don't know. Are you going to finish this?" So it's definitely not a bad gamble.
Them separately, I think I'll probably release one,
stagger it out. Yeah.
Yeah, wait 3 months to release the other. Wait 3 months to release the other. But it will be a case of this is finished. Definitely, yeah. But yeah, I'm eager to finish it because I think the story that I'm telling in the fantasy trilogy is a story that's worth telling as well. I'm a big fan of Brandon Sanderson as well. It's not particularly popular. This is everybody's piling on him at the moment. But what I've tried to do, I love Grimdark. I love Abercrombie. I love Sanderson, and I kind of thought there's a middle ground between these two. There's a genre that isn't like everybody is a bad person and nobody gets what they want, and like everybody's basically superheroic and everything works out. I thought there's a middle ground somewhere between these two, something that'll work. But it's like I don't know whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. I don't know whether he's going to get what he wants or he's not going to get it. But I think the ambiguity will probably work well in a story and leave people kind of guessing as to where it's going to go. Because I think fantasy needs that to some extent. I love me a quest book. I've got a whole stack of them down here, and I've read most of the epic authors, but they can be a bit predictable. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
The good guys. There's going to be a bad guy. They're going to have to get something that's going to defeat him, and they're going to win out in the end. And there'll be some minor twists along the way. And they're great. They're lovely. They're like a warm blanket. You can sit there and you know what you're going to get. But I just like I like the idea of having something that just twists it a little. So when I plotted it out, every time I had a trope in there, I was like, okay, can I in some way, just twist this trope and make it different, and just give the readers that journey that leaves them thinking like, I don't actually know who's going to happen. What's going to happen? I don't know who's going to win. I don't know what the end result's going to be, and I hope it's going to be good. But I'm going to be okay if it's not. If that makes sense. I know it sounds a bit,
No,
But,
I mean, it sounds like a man of my heart. I am a big fan of the stories where there's not necessarily like the good guys aren't just like pure good.
yeah,
they're a little more
yeah,
complicated, and then
yeah,
or that misery factory where it's just like everything's horrible and it's gonna suck and it's gonna suck in
yeah,
the end.
yeah,
Yeah, I like the balance between where there's a little bit of. I like this idea of the sacrifice and the redemption arcs. I'm a big fan of that.
yeah, yeah. And I love ambiguous endings as well. I'm a big fan of the unreliable narrator, and to some extent, the protagonist in We Built the Dragon is an unreliable narrator as a child. But I like that idea as well. I like ambiguous endings. I love getting to the end of the book, or even a film where you kind of sidetracks at the end. You go, right, okay, I'm gonna have to read that again, or I'm gonna have to watch that again because I don't think I understood what was going on.
The ending's the best part.
Thank you for that contribution. It definitely the book definitely does get stronger the further through it. Yeah, I think
You heard it here
people,
first, folks.
yeah, most people feel that. Oh, hello. Don't say sweet tea.
Little ducky.
Alive. Yeah.
Well,
So yeah,
would you like to read a little bit from We Built a Dragon?
I would love to. Yeah. And as Huxley said when we were chatting earlier, what better place to start than at the beginning? So I will start with chapter 1. Chapter 1. Just a stupid day. It was the longest, blackest car I had ever seen. I scratched it, deep and jagged. Nobody saw, but I didn't care anyway, because it was the longest, blackest day of my life. I sloped into the church with my hands in my pockets, because nobody was telling me to stand up straight and take them out. Everyone was being really nice to me, and I hated it. I hated the man with his silly hat, and I hated the flowers. Everyone kept feeling them, saying how nice they looked. They were my mum's favourite, and they did smell nice, but I still hated them. And everyone was smelling them. And the box, I couldn't even look at that stupid, awful box. She wasn't in it. I refused to accept it. Point blank. The tears started again, hot on my cheeks. I wanted them to stop before anyone saw and laughed at me. Stupid tears. Stupid, stupid day. The church felt empty, even though loads of people turned up, all sat like sad penguins in little wooden rows, and everything creaked like Nana. The vicar said nice things about Mum, about her singing and stuff. Dad used to say that she sang like an angel. I don't know. I've never heard an angel sing, but her voice was real pretty. I was glad I'd heard her sing. They played a recording of her singing Ave Maria. That was my favourite song. I wish she'd really been there singing it, but she wasn't. All we had now was the recording. It was old and crackly, and one of those gramophone things, I reckon. The vicar called me by name, but he said Matthew, which I can't stand. Then he droned on in this dull voice that he probably practices in the shower. He talks about God and Jesus and stuff. None of it made much sense. Today made no sense. Dad finished talking to Nana, came over and squeezed my shoulder. His hand was warm and strong, and I didn't feel so alone. I was glad Dad was here. He wasn't stupid. Dad was the second best person in the world. Mum was the best, and she would be back tomorrow. I was sure of it. There we go. As I say, it's a cheerful start.
Give me a teary. I found, once I had kids, I just cry over everything. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. It just opens your emotional channels or something, doesn't it?
It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how it starts. And I promise it does get better and it does get happier.
No, I mean, that's, I can feel the child in that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gets angry, he gets sad. He goes through all the stages of grief and he goes backwards and forwards and tries to make sense of it all. And his dad tries to help him make sense in between, trying to, you know, have some fun and make sense of the world, really. Yeah.
Well, I am so excited this story is out there. I think that it definitely is. You got like a little crawling up behind you.
There's a cat there. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad it's out there. Yeah. And yeah, I hope people pick it up and gain something from reading it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely want. I would love to see this succeed. I would love to see people get the hands on it. I have ordered mine already.
Oh,
I'm going to check it out myself because I think, like I said, I know that my children are going to face this sometime.
Yeah.
Not too distant future, and I think having some sort of tool, you know, is anything that you can do to help make sense. The beauty of writing is that you can express such true human experiences in a way that's distant but not at the same time. It connects us, I think. You know?
Yeah. I think it's important. I think it's sad that less and less people are reading, because for me, it's the one thing that can really connect you with another person's thought processes. Is something that they've written. And you know, I love reading escapist fantasy, science fiction, or whatever, as much as most people. But I think it's great when there's a book that can really connect and help transform, you know, the way that you're feeling, thinking in life. Yeah.
All right. We Built a Dragon. It's out today. Everybody can go. It's a release day. It's a book's birthday. It's beautiful cover art. Yeah, absolutely. That cover art is beautiful.
It is. Yeah, I love my cover. Very happy with it.
Yeah. All right. I don't have anything else. Do you have anything last to say? Yeah, you definitely got a ninja in the background.
Do you have anything more to say, Hudson? Maybe, but he doesn't know. No, that's any questions?
Comments. There's lots of comments.
Ninja in the background. All right, okay. Yeah. No, that's that. He's shaking his hands at Nathan. Nathan. He's a boy.
What's your problem, Nathan? Nathan, what's your problem?
Yeah, it happens a lot, Nathan. You don't have to apologise. It's because he's so.
Apologise.
It's because he's so beautiful. No, we've nothing more to say. Thank you for having us on, Jessica. It's been fantastic.
Absolutely.
I've loved talking to you. I love meeting you as well.
Yeah.
It's been great. All right. Good luck with your release as well. I hope it sells really well.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Huxley.